Okay, today we're doing a BSA Meteor disassembly video. First step is to remove the stock from the action. Okay, this is pretty easy. There's two screws up there and one longer screw in the rear in the trigger guard, and remove the plastic cap. The next, you're going to need to remove this pin and this pin here to remove the trigger assembly. Okay, the two pins are now removed, and you can see the spring. They're over here. This is how they will look. You have the smaller pin here and the larger pin is here. Okay. Now we have to remove this retaining pin here, okay, and remove the assembly inside. Okay, now we have our action fixed upside down. The trigger will be sticking up this way. Now what you're going to need is a tool shaped like this, because this cross pin will have to be pushed on either side evenly to compress the spring and the rear spring guide, and this will have to slide over the pin. Okay, well, for a BSA Meteor, there's not much tension on the spring, and if you're a bloke with average strength, you're not going to have a problem. What you need is a piece of board, you know, just a piece of cheap melamine, a couple hundred by a couple hundred with a 25mm hole drilled in it. You put that over there, you place it on your waist and apply some pressure, okay, and then you just grab hold of the front of the vise and you just pull, and then you just pop the pin out. Okay, so I've just popped the pin. The pin's actually recessed and fits in the rear spring guide. Okay, so put that to one side. You can remove your attachment. You'll see how that removes. Put that aside. We don't need that until we reassemble. And of course yours won't look like this as a standard, because this one's tuned. This one's got just the Delrin rear spring guide. There's your spring. Okay, you can put that aside, and we can remove that. As you can see, here is a brass top hat, which I put in all my air rifles. I prefer brass top hats. Now we'll take this back over to the there in this part here, and just push that to the rear until it comes out, and then just pull it the rest of the way out. So I'll do that. Okay, the piston's now removed from the assembly. As you can see, there's nothing further in there. I'll give this a good clean up. This is covered with molybdenum disulfide lubricant. I just use this brand here, Molybond. You can use any molybdenum disulfide lubricant. Give this a clean up, and I'll show you how to remove the piston, head from the piston. Okay, we've got the piston removed. You'll notice with this one, how it actually works is it slides into this bigger section. You apply some pressure to compress the rubber come in. So of course, when you buy the Customairseals buffer washer and O-ring, you will just prise this O-ring off, put the buffer washer on, reuse your existing washer, and put that back together. Okay, now we'll go and I'll show you how to reassemble the vise. You squeeze it together so you compress the buffer washer, and then you just push down and push it back into your molybdenum disulfide lubricant. Apply some of this to the piston area, to these surfaces behind the seal. You don't want any in the compression chamber, really. You try and not get any in there. A little bit around here and some around the end, and any parts you see where there's wear, you just put a thin coating over the whole thing to help prevent the rust. And when you reassemble it, of course you want your cocking slot facing upwards towards the cocking slot here, because your cocking lever will go in through that hole there. And now what I would usually do is put a piece of dowel in there and put it in and push it in, and just be careful of all your cocking slot cutouts that you don't nick the O-ring when you're pushing it in. You can get in there with a deburring tool or a small needle file and just clean the inside edge of that out so it's not rough. It is pretty hard to nick these O-rings, but okay, so you've pushed your piston all the way back in, and you've applied the moly lube and you've pushed it in. You've made sure it hasn't grabbed here at the end and damaged the O-ring. Okay, so we're back at the vise, and you're firmly clamped with your soft jaws. Your trigger assembly is facing upwards. You have your rear spring guide assembled in your spring. You put some molybdenum disulfide lubricant on the internal diameter of the spring, and you can put some on the external part of the spring. You got your top hat if you have one. The standard BSA Meteor will not have one. Okay, now it's as simple as grabbing the whole assembly and putting it into the firearm. Slide it all the way in. Okay, then you will take your board, and what you have to do is place that on there, okay, and like this, and push the whole thing back in and put your cross pin through. Look, it takes a bit of effort. You can have that around like that, and a little bit of playing around. It's not actually that hard to compress, you know. I'm just putting a bit of force on that. It's not actually that bad, you know. It's pretty much all the way in. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, we're back at the bench. Next is to reassemble your trigger. As you can see, the smaller hole in the plastic trigger, these are actually captive. The spring can't come loose, so you just put it in, put your smaller pin in first, and then put your larger one, or you can do it either way, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's pretty easy to do. Together, the pin's through. Next thing we need to do is, this one's a later model. It's got the hinged cocking lever. You need to put some lubricant here on the cocking foot, so you need to put some molybdenum disulfide lubricant on here and some on this sliding surface here. Okay, so that just slips in like that. And at this stage, if you intend to replace the breech seal, you want to just drive that pin out from one direction and remove this whole assembly and drive it back in from the opposite side. It's not that hard to drive out. You really need to get yourself a nice punch set, a reasonable quality one. Okay, so now you've given it a wipe down. We've removed all the molybdenum disulfide lubricant from your hands and from the stock and from everywhere else it's gotten. It's all back together. What you need to do the first time is to load a pellet. I just shoot them into a rubbish bin or a sand trap or anywhere, just to give it might diesel, some smoke might come out of the end of it, or it burns all the lubricant off it's on the piston. You want to check that the trigger engages and it's safe, and that you have assembled it properly. Happy and safe air gunning, people.